in the finals. Here we go. You got Will Kowalczyk on grinding.
Speaking of trophy,
on your left. Yeah, Grayson Nemets on your right. Trophy in the center. Devin, break down what we got here. I don't know anything about the ramp versus breach matchup. Relatively new to Modern, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely a matchup that, I mean, people were playing Eldrazi decks before the recent announcement, but they weren't quite as the same as what they are now, like what they've kind of morphed into. They definitely were still playing Kozilek's Command, and I think that is a huge part of this matchup if you are on Grayson's side of things, where Kozilek's Command, which we've talked about a couple of times today, traditionally, if you see a big mana deck versus combo deck, you would normally associate that with combo deck being heavy, a heavy favorite against the big mana deck because the big mana deck needs a little bit more time to get going. The expensive cards don't matter as much. But the big difference here is Kozilek's Command being able to hit, and like it's good. It's kind of good against all the plans that Will has going, where early on in the game you can hit an Emery, or well, not early on, but you can hit a Tameo. That was a pretty good one to hit. This we see a turn 1 Emery, but it's also graveyard hate.
Zeros.
So if Will's going for a breach, then it can help interact with that too.
Well, as you mentioned, we got Hedge Maze too. We can play a tap land and still put a turn 1 Emery into play, thanks to all the Moxen. 3 mana now in play for Will Kowalczyk, and all Grayson has is, well, he doesn't have this Devour of Destiny. He just had to reveal that. That's not in play. Although it's not clear to me if this is in play, if he would automatically win. So that's something to be said for how powerful Will Kowalczyk's turn 1 here is. And I mean, I think we've seen previously already in top 8. The ability to just make multiple mana on turn 1 has just come up over and over again, whether it's Wrenn and 6 or whatever this is about to be.
Is it Tameo too? Oh, Haywire Might. I was going to say
Haywire Might.
I've seen some turn 1 Emery Tameo draws, and when that happens, when the breach deck has that, it's like, what are you even supposed to do about that? But yeah, and Grayson does Grayson sort of have the ace in the hole in this matchup, where some Eldrazi decks don't play Karn, some do. And Grayson is sporting the full 4 copies of Karn this weekend. So, we talk about, the cards that Grayson wants to ramp towards. Sometimes the Myco spawns, that gets you more ramp. By the time you can cast Myco spawn on turn 3, it's not clear that Will cares about losing 1 land. So, that is certainly a much more powerful card to ramp into because it turns off all the artifacts, can go get graveyard hate, can kind of do everything and solo the breach deck by itself. Now, I will say, Will has, I would argue, more removal spells than most. He has 3 Unholy Heats, where I think most play, somewhere between 1 and 2. So having 3 copies does give him a little bit more of a fighting chance against Karn at least.
And the Grape Shot, he's not just doing the Thassa's Oracle thing. He's using a Grape Shot, which can just pick away at some loyalty. That can matter too. I mean, I have been on the Storm side casting some Grape Shots to kill some X1s, X2s, and obviously Karn got a little bit more loyalty in that, but you got some creatures to pick it down. As here's another tap land. Gonna do some surveilling. She's gonna keep that one on top. Still 3 mana available for Will. Going to pick off the Utopia Sprawl with the Haywire.
Oh, love it. Stone Rain. Will's like, Grayson, you are playing 4 copies of Sowing Myco Spawn. You think you're the only person who can Stone Rain? I got those too. Don't you worry.
Yeah, don't worry. My deck can do it too. And that's kind of the story of the Grinding Breach deck. Whatever you can do, I can do better. As here comes the Soul Guide Lantern to really annihilate Grayson's graveyard, and all the cards will go in exile. Just a forest to this pile of permanents on the other side of the battlefield. Back to Grayson we go. Gonna need to get some ramping started. Eldrazi Temple matters.
Well, you mentioned gonna need to get some ramping started. Grayson's ramp is actually all artifacts and enchantments, right? There's 4 talismans and 4 Utopia Sprawls. And because that Emery plus Haywire Might is just sitting there, Grayson, you're gonna deploy a talisman here. Will can just kind of pick it off next turn, and it's gonna buy Will so much time here.
Yeah, that's disgusting. Actually, just being able to recast the Haywire Might here is a big deal for shutting down the ramp. I mean, outside the Soul Lands, right? Obviously, Eldrazi Temple is what it is. As here's the Emery trick. Going to go ahead and mill 4. Hits another Emery, including the Grinding Station. All right.
Station. Are we dead?
And there's Breach out of the box. Yep. That's lethal. And we're done. We're done.
That's Breach, folks.
What?
We're done.
You can't just blow up somebody's mana thing and then just... let's go to the sideboards.
So the combo deck, the combo deck casts Stone Rain and 1 on turn 3. So,
I mean, what happens when you have 2 Mox sideboards? We got got 1 Chalice of the Void, 1 Cityscape Leveler, 2 Dismembers, 1 Disruptor Flute, 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Complex Return, 1 Liquid Metal Coating, 1 Soulless Jailer, 3 copies of Stone Rain, 1 The Stone Brain, 1 Tormod's Crypt, and 1 Trinisphere. How are we fixing this?
I mean, it's difficult, right? Because a lot of these artifacts look appealing. Soulless Jailer stops the breach from, doing anything realistically. You have Chalice the Void, which we've seen before come in against the breach deck, which can be pretty potent. Tormod's Crypt and Stone Brain and Trinisphere. All those cards are great against the breach deck. But you got to remember, this is a Karn deck, so you want to keep in some number of those. Now, it really is going to come down to how many cards Grayson wants to cut, right? If you have cards that you just feel like you absolutely have to get out of the deck that don't do anything, then maybe you want to board in some of those artifacts, because in, like, let's say for example, in a game where you don't have as much ramp, maybe you don't have time to get to Karn plus artifact and you just want to draw the artifact in your opening hand. So, maybe you want to cut the Kozilek's returns. There's not a lot of creatures on Will's side of things. They can be good at killing Emery, but even then it's kind of slow. So I might consider cutting those and just boarding in some of the slightly less impactful artifacts that are still going to be good in your opening hand.
Yeah, and that's really, like you said, that's been the equation with a lot of these Karn boards. And in this case, I mean, I think it matters more than most, just because, as you mentioned, Karn out of the box is already so good. Doesn't really need that much help from the Wish board. And with that, let's take a look at the Grinding Station Menace, a deck we've seen quite a bit in the hands of Will Kowalczyk, and what he's got to work with. A sideboard we've seen before, because Will wins a lot. And we got 2 copies of Bestage Who Endures, 4 copies of Consigned to Memory, 1 Fire Spout, 1 Flame of Anor, 1 Nature's Claim, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Pyroclasm, 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Spell Snare, 1 Thassa's Oracle, and 1 Wrenn and 6. How do we want to adjust for the Eldrazi ramp deck?
Well, I got to tell you, Will definitely came prepared. Will, if there's any one matchup that he prepared for the most, it kind of seems like it was Eldrazi. There's 4 Consigned to Memories, a Nature's Claim, a Spell Pierce, and 2 Besajus. Those, I think, are pretty much all slam dunks. You could maybe consider boarding in Needle to stop Needle on Karn. But I mean, like we talked about, Karn, the static is still good enough where maybe that just doesn't matter that much. But yeah, the Consigns, the Claim, the Pierce, and the Besajus, I think those are all slam dunks. Probably wants to get some of the kill spell. Well, I was going to say you want to get the kill spells, but you kind of have to keep in heat for Karn. So maybe you shave on some of the cheaper blue creatures at that point.
Yeah, I mean, really, kind of all A pluses here for Will Kowalczyk, and what's so impressive about this deck is you're gluing together all of these plans with Moxen, which is a great way to do it, obviously, but you're gluing together those plans, and then also your sideboard just supports what's going on in the main deck very nicely. In addition, for it being so soon after some major format shakeups, I mean, this deck really seems to be impressive. Like we were talking about, how do you attack this thing? All your sideboard cards only hit one axis, and there's so many going on that now you just need to draw multiple sideboard cards. That's a tough thing to do, especially when there are other decks in the format that you still need to prepare for.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough line to balance, and I don't really have a great answer for you. We've been talking about this the whole day, trying to figure out how the heck we're supposed to beat this Grinding Breach deck. And I mean, it's just pressure plus disruption, which is, I guess, what Boros is, the role that Boros is supposed to play in the matchup. But, again, you have to layer your disruption. You can't have too much of it, because if you draw too much of it, you just get buried by their card advantage. And it's a lot, Drake. It's a lot.
It seems like a lot. Both Boros energies, of course, fell in the semifinals that were in our top 8, but Grayson Nemets potentially punching his ticket, of course, member of our previous championship, qualified also on a Modern Showdown, his take on the Charbelcher deck. So likes his big colorless spells, I guess. I mean, very different flavor of colorless spells here than the Charbelcher deck. And of course, for the member of Team Flex slot already up a game is Will Kowalczyk. Looks to be very well set up to punch his ticket to the championship.
I see a 3-ball in Grayson's hand. That one did come in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a card you just want, right? Like, you just cast it on 3. That's like good.
Well, you say cast it on 3. Grayson's casting it on turn 2. I think there's a Sprawl and I think it's Sprawl, Talisman, Trinisphere, 4 lands for Grayson.
Seems good to me.
Turn 2 Trinisphere, not bad. Now, heads up from, Will can deploy the zeros, which you might want to do that anyways in the face of something like, Chalice or Trinisphere if either of those came in. So if Will deploys the zeros, maybe can still play a spell on turn 2 if there is a Mox, the Mox that's turned on, of course. having second land plus the Mox will allow him to play a spell through that Trinosphere on turn 2.
Yeah, and that's part of the crux, right? Your mana problems are like kind of solved, so you can still fight. And obviously, 3 Besejus. I mean, that's a lot of answers too. So obviously, great start for Grayson, but Will does have draws, so Grayson's going to need some pressure to back it up. Like you mentioned, pressure plus disruption is the formula for beating these very effective combo decks. We'll see. I mean, we know Grayson has the disruption. Does he have pressure? We'll find out. Has some draw steps to find it, if not, and just Utopia Sprawl on the basic forest. Back to Will. Got a Scalding Tarn. You mentioned deploying the zeros being an important aspect. Not seeing a lot of cards being vomited into play.
Yeah, and I wonder, not clear whether or not Will has them in his hand, but it's also a thing where maybe you don't expect the Trinosphere to get boarded in. You're not, worried about casting them or wants to slow roll them. Again, not clear if there's actually any in Will's hand, period. But presumably Grayson will be casting that Trinosphere this turn, and that's going to be a good one. Or we're going to go for Talisman first, maybe. I don't hate this because
Cavern. Yeah, so we have 2 talismans.
We that makes sense.
Per turn. So now we can actually springboard ourselves to 5 mana, and with no zeros, maybe you're not really worried about the Trinosphere getting worse.
That's a good point, because you would maybe guess that if Will had the zeros, maybe from Grayson's side of things, you would expect Will to play them out potentially. And yeah, getting that second Talisman into play is pretty big, because now if you play the Trinosphere this turn, you can't double Talisman next turn because they both cost 3. You can play one of them on the following turn, but it kind of like you're basically giving Will a 1-turn window, but in doing so, you get the extra Talisman into play, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, and it's awkward because we had an Ugin's Labyrinth, but we had no Eldrazi thing to go with it. So really, that could have helped our mana situation on the previous turn. Maybe our turn looks entirely different, but we just drew another land in Eldrazi Temple. And now, even if we Trinosphere, there's a Saga in play, which can do, a good job of operating under any kind of Trinosphere lock. And that's assuming there's no counterspell for it already dialed up.
I wonder if Will just says, yeah, sure, you can have the Trinosphere. Look, if you got a Consign and another kill spell in hand with the Saga in play and land 3, like maybe you just don't even care, which is kind of insane, right?
You can grab Haywire Bite and that picks it off, right? Off your Saga.
Yeah, that's
3, just make a few dudes and whatever. All right, no, we're gonna go for it. And we're gonna replicate. Oh, here we go. Replicate.
I think part of the reason he wanted to use the counterspell this turn is because if he feels like he's forced to use the counterspell next turn, then he doesn't get to make a Saga token. So maybe that's something that's going through Will's head, where it's like, if I know I want to make a Saga token, I'd rather use my mana this turn.
Now we're kind of opening up a spot where a draw and sowing Microspawn, you mentioned that land destruction not really mattering. I feel like it would matter a lot.
How about a Null Drifter?
Oh, that also matters a lot.
That one's not bad.
Big body, draws cards. That's a good one to start laying some pressure down, although the disruption has been answered already.
Now here, Grayson has an interesting decision to make, where you can just Divination and try to find a Mycospawn, then you can go Soul Land Mycospawn kicked, or you just tap 7 mana for the Null Drifter. This is close. Given the fact that you have the ability to Mycospawn, the only problem is none of your 7s are good, right? Devourer or Breaker, because you can only get the 6 mana after you Divination, even with a Soul Land. So I think it makes sense to just full hard cast, but it's a really tough decision here for Grayson.
Speaking of awkward, Sanctum of Ugin the follow-up. I think we would have wanted that one before casting the 7-1 Eldrazi Elemental of Null Drifter, but we do cast that one full retail. Of course, the riff on Mull Drifter, but supersized for the sake of being an Eldrazi. Goes from 5 to 7, but gets to double its power and toughness and gets Annihilator 1 for its trouble. And so we made a construct much smaller than a Null Drifter. A lot of cards in hand for Will. What is he working with over there?
It's smaller than a Null Drifter now. I'm wondering if Will's thinking about construct token, go fetch an artifact, play an artifact from hand to size them up to 4/4s, and then maybe you can attack through the Null Drifter and try to race it. But hey, that Annihilator 1 is not insufficient.
Yeah, you don't have that. You don't have all those zeros and random things lying around to sacrifice.
Yep.
Grabbing Mox Opal. All right, so we have an artifact. And we have Metalcraft thanks to making that construct. But still, surprisingly tied up on mana here a little bit is Will, compared to what Grayson's got going on the other side of the field, actually ramping, unlike what we saw in game 1. Bobble
Okay.
follow-up, as you mentioned. Those are 4/4s now. Can attack and trade. Breeding pool untapped.
One more artifact would be huge here for Will. Yeah,
Oh, he
getting
has it.
5/5s.
Needle. What are we needling?
My guess would
Karn,
be
probably?
Karn.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the only one I think that's relevant here. But this is huge because now Grayson can go to, it's like Grayson takes 5, goes to 14, and then you have 10 power in play. So you need 2. Oh, I was going to say you need 2 artifacts for lethal next turn, but I actually only need 1.
Yeah, so we did name Karn the Great Creator with the Pithy Needle, and Tamio follow-up. I mean, this is quite an explosive turn, and holding on to a lot of those artifacts, I think, was Will. Interesting in the face of Chalices and Trinisphere, but, I mean, obviously very timely. Is Malevolent Rumble, kind of the card of the hour on the other side of the equation, going to find some great targets here.
I think, perfect, because he hit the Kindred instant, and he found an Emrakul. So if we do a count at Sorcery, Land, Artifact, Kindred, Instant, that's 5. Then can we do a quick count here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any land should be Emrakul, I think.
And we know he has an Ugin's Labyrinth in hand still, I think. So I think he can Ugin's Labyrinth, not imprint, and he has it, which is huge.
Yep.
How timely is this?
Yeah, this is going to be a brutal turn here for Will, because now the Emrakul is going to make the constructs go. You're just going to kill the constructs. You can sack the bauble, make them 4/4s. You could, I guess, there's not really a way to make them 3/3s. I don't think. Not before combat.
Chalice was 0. So are we short? I mean, Grayson's not slamming. Okay, no, there it is. I was like, what are we thinking about? Slam the big thing. Here we go. All right, we've done it. Emrakul the Promised then. Oh, yeah, here we go. The 13, Eldrazi legendary creature from Eldritch Moon. Costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. Whenever you cast a spell, gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn. Flying, trample, protection from instants. I hate Mindslaver effects. They're so miserable. I hate them so much.
Will also hates them.
Awful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously it's got to be even more miserable to lose to it in like the finals or whatever. This is so miserable. Nice. Got permanents? Put them in the graveyard.
Well, thinking about what to sacrifice here to the Null Drifter. This is interesting that we're sacrificing an artifact, because now, well, I guess it wouldn't matter because there's only 1 creature untapped anyways, but all right, how bad is it going to be? Well,
Breach makes me think
at least Breach
bad.
for nothing.
You can't besiege yourself, thankfully.
Is there anything cool we can do with like Breach? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, not a lot going on, huh? A lot of lands.
Not a ton. You can. Oh, actually, I wonder if Grayson wanted to sacrifice the Sanctum last turn. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You seem to keep it in play pretty intentionally. I can't imagine that. I mean, unless you have another big play, I feel like you wanted to go grab something, but who knows? I mean, the Emrakul might just be good enough on its own. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So you can run the Tamio into the Emrakul if you're worried about that thing, and get some of the artifacts out of here by sacrificing Bobble and make the things tiny.
Did we have life totals updated? Am I missing something? Because didn't Grayson take 5 last turn from the construct? I don't remember. I mean, I know he took 5 last turn. I don't think he blocked, right?
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I don't know if it gained life.
We'll check that.
Does have some gain. Like, whatever. We'll get it updated here, I'm sure. Whatever it is, as these players are trying to figure out how to navigate. Oh, there's a clue, right? So there's a clue made by. That's kind of awkward. The clue made by Tamio killing the Tamio is.
Yeah, you can't choose to not make the clue.
Right. That's so awkward.
We did kill the Tamio, and now we get the Breach online. We can.
You do any cute consign stuff?
I guess what you can do, you can play Hedge Maze and consign the Surveil trigger.
All right, now we're just gonna play the Visagia, I guess, and play Opal, nuking the graveyard, basically. All right, and that's gonna go into the Chalice on 0, so that just goes back to the graveyard. Do you sack Bobble? That's my big thing. I've been thinking
probably not. Because you're just giving Will an extra card on the time walk turn, right? So you probably wait. Yeah, I mean, Will's going to sack it eventually, but you don't want to just give him the card up front. You want to make him wait at least one more turn on that card. Because Grayson does have lethal. That I mean, Will's at 13.
Yeah, I mean, Emrakul's so big.
So I believe. I mean, looking at Will's deck list. Looking at Will's deck list, there's not really a ton here. There's the one Odawara, but other than that, not really much that's going to deal with an Emrakul.
I mean, Odawara's the card, right? But even now, it doesn't feel good. It's like, okay, do it.
Yeah, you bounce it, you just like, all right, I'll do it again.
Cast it again. And that might be the reason that Grayson wanted to keep the Sanctums. If it gets Odawara, that's like maybe the one way you lose. So whatever, just have your mana to cast it. Don't sacrifice your land.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will not loving it. Different story every time. Here comes the Emrakul the Promised End, threatening lethal, notably the same number as Will's life total. Does not bode well for Will's chances of living another turn with this Emrakul in play. Does he have an Aether Spellbomb at least? Anything? No. Great. Just Odawara.
No. All right. One Odawara. That's really all we got. Nothing else is even going to come close to killing an Emrakul.
So Will and his construct tokens versus a giant plate of spaghetti on the other side of the field.
Drake, how does Chalice Check work versus Mindslaver?
I don't know. I don't want to make any accusations, but I think if you intentionally miss it and it's beneficial to you, that's not going to be a judge call you're going to have a good time with.
True. Let's not get into that. That was
that's I don't want to speculate too much, but I can imagine however it goes, it's not good. Don't do it. Don't Chalice Check yourself.
Will kept the card on top. He surveilled. He actually looked at the card off a bauble and then surveilled, kept it on top. So it is something. I don't know what it is, but it's something.
Okay. So we can sack that. We have the Odawara.
Okay. Grayson's like,
okay. We did. I mean, we have it.
I promise you, I'm going to do it again. I promise. It's going to happen again.
So wait, we know he kept the card on top, so it has to suck, right? Like it can't be good.
It was the Odawara. The card that Will kept on top was the Odawara.
Sure, because he drew it.
He drew it off the bubble. Right. Which so I mean, it buys you a turn, but I don't really know where Will goes from here. You know.
Well, I mean, running your contract that's not a plan anymore, right? So you just need more draw steps to Underworld Breach number 2. So you need to hope it's 2 cards down. I mean, that's a plan. It's like a plan.
It is something.
My favorite plan, but it's a plan.
Okay, we're going for imprinting Null Drifter.
Does this mean we can sack the Sanctum of Ugin now? I think so.
We should have more than enough, right?
Yeah, so I think so can we follow up with anything?
4 mana left over. We could Myco Spawn with no kicker. And we can Myco Spawn with no kicker, get Bajuka Bog.
Oh, we can grab Soulless Jailer. Grabs any colorless creature.
Oh, that too. Right. That's better. Even better.
Yeah, that is much better. Oh, yeah. And this is Will doing it doesn't just grab Eldrazi check. It grabs any colorless creature? Yeah, it sure does.
I've gotten a few ballistas off that in my day.
Yeah, I used to grab Ballista in Tron all the time.
Oh, yeah.
A little fireball for lethal. Robo fireball.
All right. What's really good when you have a lot of mana is Walking Ballista.
Yeah, as it happens. Walking Ballista is just kind of a nonsense card. It just combos with everything. It's good if you just have a lot of mana. Card's just kind of some nonsense. Soulless Jailer, a solid follow-up. Able to grab that one. Get a look at that one. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyard or exile. So yeah, Underworld Breach, not a chance. Take that somewhere else. Nice and holy.
Do a little fetch shocking, or I guess fetch failed to find is probably better than fetch shock because 9 and 6 don't matter that much. Could heat the construct. Not really. I mean, there's really not much else you can do.
I don't know what matters. I mean, even if there's somehow a miraculous Wrath of God that happens, Grayson still has a Null Drifter on dial-up from the other Ugin's Labyrinth, which could end the game. So, yeah, what are we doing here? Yeah, fetch, fail to find, unholy heat yourself. And we're gonna look through the deck. All right, here we go. I'm looking.
I guess Will could have conceded in response to the fetch, because you don't want to give away sideboard plans, but I mean, most of it's probably obvious, or most of it's
I mean, they have they have access to each other's deck lists at this point, so it's literally all you get is the
seeing how much of each, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But
which might change play draw. You don't know.
It could, But the cards that are good in Will's sideboard, you would expect all of those to come in, like regardless player or draw, like the consigns.
Exactly. Yeah, I think ultimately it doesn't matter one way or the other. These players, I mean, like I said, they're both series mainstays. They know each other, and I don't think it's not one of those spots where I think that's a leverage point that matters. We're just gonna take a draw step on Emrakul the Promised, and just make sure it's not some kind of
maximizing camera
Black
time.
Lotus combo card, and call it a day.
Do you mean Oracle of the Alpha?
Sure. That'd be cool. That's going to do it. The second promise. It's not the first Emrakul the Promise and trigger that gets you. It's always the second one. I
mean, every time. Emrakul lived up to its promise. Just saying.
And yeah, that's true. You're right. Well, a very different game from game number one. Obviously Will Kowalczyk kind of blew the doors off the game in game number one, but Grayson really able to get the mana set up in game number two, and that was obviously a huge difference. When you're playing out a ramp deck, it's going to need to get the mana set up. And now we're down to a game 3 in our final match. One game of Magic will determine which one of these players is going to be in our championship right now. And I know both of these players are fiending for it. And like I said, Grayson's somebody that's got it done that way before too. I think basically one of the last possible tournaments to do so last year as well. So somebody that is very familiar with winning showdowns as the path to qualify. And Will Kowalczyk, like I said, no stranger to the series as well. Member of Team Flex slot, playing arguably the best deck in the format. Versus Grayson, I don't know. Eldrazi, one of the best decks. Looks like there's multiple different builds out there, and it's not clear they can keep up with everything, but Grayson's put on quite a performance today.
Yeah, I mean, going into the weekend, it was kind of a big test whether or not these Eldrazi decks could keep up with everything else, like Breach and Boros. We kind of saw that bore out a little bit last weekend with the RCs, where Breach beat Eldrazi in the finals in Prague, and I believe I can't remember what happened in the Canada finals, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of Breach last weekend. It was kind of the talk of the town. It was on everybody's radar. And here's the thing, right? It was maybe the most popular deck, but everybody going into this weekend knew what deck they had to beat. It was Grinding Breach. And turns out not everybody could do that.
Yeah, I don't know that we did a good job of that, team.
Not sure. We need to have another meeting about this.
We'll reconvene. We'll realign, an alignment meeting, if you will. Now, this is, and of course, we've seen Will in the past loves his combo decks. I mean, I've seen him win with the Amulet Titan deck. We've seen him. I mean, he played Rhinos back in the day. Really, somebody with a lot of range, a lot of versatility. Unsurprised to see him have the ability to pick up this extremely powerful combo deck and come battle to the top here between these two players, both on mulligans. It's maybe a little scrappy game as we begin to determine a victor among the two. I mean, obviously, like I said, a best deck player through and through is Will Kowalczyk. Plays like Nadu and whatever the best deck is at the time. He's going to be someone that's supporting it. Less so on Grayson. I mean, obviously, right? Like Belcher was not the deck to be playing when he won an event on Belcher. And here, as you mentioned, I think Breached the deck to play as far as if you want to be playing, quote unquote, the best deck for the weekend. Eldrazi not really it. So Grayson kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but has seen a lot of success.
Likes big mana.
Series. True. Likes making a lot of mana.
Like. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I too like making a lot of mana. So I get
fan of making a lot of mana. I don't know. I can get behind making little mana. I like cheap spells. I do. I'm a big cantrip guy.
See, Drake, technically Mox Opal makes a lot of mana. It's on turn one, more than you should have access to, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, it breaks the fundamental rules of the game. Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're a fan of having a lot of mana, then maybe some Mox Opal.
I see. I see what you're going with here. Maybe you should put Mox Opal in your deck if you like having mana. Okay, all right, I'm with it. Grayson,
not saying that Grayson should play Mox Opal, but
yeah, I don't know. Whatever Grayson's doing is working. Kind of reminds me of Dominic Harvey too. Like Dominic Harvey's the same way. Just kind of plays whatever he wants, wins everything anyway. I don't know how those players do it. I can only win. I needed the crutch of busted decks to do any kind of winning.
It's the big mana conglomerate,
Oh, there's like a society for this.
There is, yes.
Okay, the Ramp Illuminati or whatever. These players are resolving mulligans. This is a lot of nonsense here, all for one game. I mean, a lot on the line for these players. Like I said, we're up here goofing. They're down there stoic as ever. Ton of money, ton of points, ton of equity in the invite, and of course a trophy on the line for our victor, which of course we're going to get to hear from them after the match as well, I think, as there's a World Breaker underneath an Ugin's Labyrinth on turn 1. Got a Soul Land.
Soul Land incoming, and game 2 or the previous game, Grayson had a turn 2 Trinisphere. Don't quite see if that's in the grip, but I do see there's an Emrakul, a Rumble, a Wooded Foothills. Not sure what the follow-up is past that, but maybe looking towards a turn 2 Rumble, and then the Rumble can maybe find one of those hate pieces.
Yeah, I mean, Rumble, this is a card you talked a lot about earlier in the broadcast about how it's like really one of the best cards in this deck and really one of the unsung heroes of putting this deck back on the map prior to kind of its fall off pre-MH3 and even a little bit post, because the One Ring was, such a big deal. And obviously, there's talk, the One Ring went in the Breach deck, so now what's going to happen to it? But Malevolent Rumble really propping this up alongside Mox Opal and stuff, and big upgrades means that great increase in
Awkward draw step here for Grayson. Didn't deploy that one last turn. That's because that was the top card. Really would have liked to have that Talisman last turn, but still is able to make a good turn here, right? Can play the Talisman, going to play the Rumble. Really just wants to try and find one of those hate pieces. Now, I'm curious to see how many came in, right? We looked at Grayson's sideboard. I think we said, I want to say 4 or 5. Trinisphere, Stonebrain, Soulless Jailer, Chalice of the Void. And so those were the ones that could potentially come in. Not sure if maybe all of them did, because then you lose a little bit of luster on your Karn. But as you mentioned earlier, the Karn static ability is good enough where maybe you just board them all in.
Right, and that's exactly the case. It's like you don't really need the minus, so that means you can just board a lot more of the stuff in. There is a card, speaking of which, a lot of good options here.
Yeah,
gonna pick the card up very quickly. Yeah.
That is definitely
for later too.
That's definitely the card that Grayson wants to have access to at all times. Now again, we know Will has 4 copies of Consign, so really gonna see if Will has one of those available. But if there's no Consign next turn and that card hits the battlefield, with no graveyard, I think is that 2 cards?
2?
I think it might be 2.
That's a great way to power through. Just have a second one.
Yeah, because Will doesn't have a stocked graveyard already. So there could be a situation where if Will has Delirium, Grayson goes, okay, Karn, get maybe Tormod's Crypt, and then, if Grayson goes to use the Crypt, then Will can respond at heat. But with no graveyard, you can just pop the Crypt off immediately and not have to worry about the Karn getting heated too, which is interesting here.
Here's Emery as a follow-up. Did end of turn fetch for a Thundering Falls and Graveyard and Underworld Breach. That could be potentially meaningful, as 4 more cards joining the graveyard, including Tameo, Besiju, and Saga.
So land, enchantment, creature, I believe, which is only 3, so doesn't quite have enough for the Unholy Heat, if that's what we have. Presumably this is getting consigned, yeah.
Yeah, it sure is consigned and a little tough, but not too bad. I see an Emrakul in hand among the other decks. And obviously with the heat as part of the equation, maybe there's a merit to ticking up the Karn to pick off Mox instead of reaching for a minus. Not sure. Depends on how much mana is left over. Obviously the context of the game matters a lot, but just kind of planning for your Karn to get removed. And of course, if you get to tick it up twice, then maybe you're actually okay. And that's fine.
Yeah. And it also matters how many of those pieces he boarded in, right? If he boarded in all 4 of those lock pieces and has nothing good to get off Karn anyways, then might just say, okay, well, I'm just going to
have to imagine one. There's got to be something.
Yeah.
The question is, how much mana does that cost?
Yeah. Could be Chalice. I feel like maybe you keep the most impactful one in the sideboard, because that's the one that if you keep it in the board, you effectively have 4 copies of it, as opposed to boarding it in and only having 1 copy to draw, which I think is the Stonebrain, but you could also maybe make an argument for Trinisphere, which we did see that in the last game.
Well, there's more to the equation, too. It's which of the cards is good at the spot where you can cast a Karn versus which cards could be potentially good earlier. And Trinisphere is a good example. Trinisphere is a card you can play on 1, 2, 3, those turns before Karn can even come down. That has a lot of text. Whereas Stonebrain, not really need to play it, activate it. It's a lot more work. And you kind of want to be able to do it all in one go, which you can't do until after you already kind of have the mana for Karn the Great Creator anyway. So there's a little bit more to the equation. And we're going to look at the sideboard here. Tormod's Crypt going to be the grab off the Karn down tick that did resolve. Dismember in hand among the leftovers. Some good leftovers, too. Null Drifter, Emrakul the Promised Land, and Dismember working with.
Yeah, those are all pretty good leftovers, and Will is in a really tricky spot here. Has the Emery going, but any artifacts that he could even play off of the Emery, which I don't even know if there is an artifact in the graveyard. But even if there was, it would get shut off by the Karn anyways. Does have Delirium, but because of that Tormod's Crypt, if there is a heat off at the top, then Grayson could just pop the Tormod's Crypt. Yeah, Grinding Station, 2 mana.
Not what the doctor ordered.
Does not do a lot here.
2 mana blank text box is not exciting. As here is a Dismember on the Emery on end step. Or I think on attack step. Sorry.
Just want to protect the
We're attacking down the card.
As possible.
Right. Back over to Grayson we go. Getting to untap with Karn has to spell bad news, and Will does not look excited about that at all. And Grayson has the mana set up. I mean, this is really the spots where we've seen Grayson be able to slam the door on this game. Only 1 game away from his ticket to the championship on the first weekend of the 2025, season 1. The first opportunity to do it.
Yeah, looking at the graveyard, I believe Grayson has instant, planeswalker, creature, land. So the Emrakul costs 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8.
Land is 8 plus Scion is 9. I think that might be enough. Right? Well, or no, I think I counted the Talisman as a temple.
I think we're 1 short.
Yeah, we're 1 short. Okay.
Graveyard count is correct.
I think it's 4.
Okay.
I see land, planeswalker, creature, sorcery.
Instant.
Instant.
Wait, no, it's instant sorcery. Instant sorcery, planeswalker, land, creature. That's 5.
Oh, it is 5. So there is enough. Yeah, okay.
Well, which means 9, which means Emrakul the Promised End already. And yeah, Will looks at his 1 card like, come on, my cards don't even work. What a beating. Emrakul the Promised End.
See, here's the thing, Drake. Emrakul the Promised End is not as good when you have a card in play, because normally you would want to sacrifice their artifacts and do stuff with them. But now with the card in play, what are you going to do with the Time Walk turn?
Yeah, what are you supposed to do 13-13? I mean, it's basically textless. You might as well cut them.
This Thassa's Oracle's going in the trash, but
what a frustrating draw for Wheel 2. Drawing the consign, the turn of your Mindslaver from Emrakul the Promised End is just not how we wanted to draw this up at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you want to do is, I think you want to go bin the Oracle and then play the Breach, play the Opal, exile the Oracle, and that'll get the Oracle out of Will's, the Oracle just out of the equation. Now, Will has a Grape Shot. Presumably, maybe that came in, maybe it didn't, but yeah, heads up play from Grayson here. Just wants to get rid of that Oracle, I would guess. Yeah, you see him just reaching right for it. Get out of here with that.
Yeah, get that garbage out of here. All right, we're going to cast this Opal. We're going to counter it. We're going to nuke the graveyard at an end step, and you can have nothing. You can have 3 lands and a textless Grinding Station.
We can also consign the Opal too. Sure.
Yeah. Get that out of your hand. I don't want you countering my spells. Come on now. Oh, we're going to cast it again.
Yeah, he just wants to get rid of more stuff out of the
graveyard. He doesn't want to actually use the crypt. All right, sure.
I think he wants to try and turn off Delirium, maybe.
Sure.
Heat is one of Will's better draws, I guess. But Heat's not even close to good enough because the Emrakul's just going to kill him.
Yeah, this Emrakul is a 2-turn clock right now. And all right. Yeah, it's a land as the draw. That's not good enough. Then Grayson going to win this game, match, and tournament. 2 games to 1 of Will Kowalczyk, punching his ticket to the Energy Championship weekend 1. How does he do it? He shows up, plays whatever he feels like playing, wins. I don't know how he does it, but I'm going to ask him.
He just keeps playing. All he wants to do is make more than the amount of mana that he is supposed to make, and he's doing a good job of it. Got Lotus Blooms in the previous event. Now with the Eldrazi Temples. Shout out to Grayson. Congratulations.